This is the Extra Point Podcast. During this podcast, we will dive deeper into our Sunday teaching and share practical next steps for your faith journey. Now, let's kick off the Extra Point.
Hello and welcome to the Extra Point Podcast here with Southridge Church. My name is Anna Blake. I'm the youth pastor here, and joining us today is our lead pastor, Scott Beha, and we have started a new series called Bumper Sticker Theology. Yeah. If you are new here with the Extra Point or Southridge Church, make sure you subscribe, share with a friend so that you don't miss any episodes. You can also find this series and so much more on YouTube. Just search up SRCWV. So in this new series, Bumper Sticker Theology, we're taking a look at phrases and cliches that we hear in the Christian community, or just in almost good-heartedness towards others, that give people the a little bit of hope or a little bit of a moment to feel a nicety from somebody. And really, some of those cliches and phrases do potentially more harm than good. Yeah. And so this past week, we took a look at the phrase, God won't give you more than you can handle. Yeah. So just for anyone who maybe missed it or wants to kind of see a picture of what that looked like, can you remind us of what that phrase can do in our culture?
Yeah, I hear this so much, and it's not just like it makes sense when people say it and they're just unacquainted with faith or the church or whatnot. It goes, oh, okay, well, like they don't actually know any better. It's bothersome when it's Christians and sometimes even pastors that will say something this for a lack of a better word, ignorant, like that God won't give you more than you can handle. It's like that on the surface, practically speaking, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. If you've ever been a human and experienced a season where you couldn't handle it, where you were like, literally, if one more thing happens, I'm going to something's going to happen. I don't know what. I just can't take anything. All of us have been there. And so if we really believe God won't give us more than we can handle, then we have to either, in those moments where we definitely can't handle it, either God made a mistake or he's made us inadequate to handle what he thinks that we can handle. Either way, neither one of those is a very good place to be. Yeah. It definitely doesn't help someone that's in a hard situation go, hey, God won't give you more than you can handle. And while they're in that hard situation, they're like, well, my gosh, I can't handle this right now. So there must be something wrong with me. So now I get to add failure on top of everything else that we're feeling. And so it's just not a very helpful statement, practically speaking. Even apart from the Christian side of it and the Bible side, which we'll get to next, just on the surface, if we were to ever think about, and this is the problem with all bumper sticker theology, is I don't think that we're actually thinking about what we said. Like I mentioned, I gave a bunch of examples on Sunday of some of these that we're not going to get to cover. But just to uncover, hey, if you just I don't know, use that critical thinking part of your brain God gave you,
right.
The one that I had the most fun with was God must have needed another angel up in heaven. And I go, just think about that for a second, what you just said. Let's say that it's your grandpa that died. Mm-hmm. And so God killed your grandpa because he needed him to become an angel. What does that say about God?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have to have a PhD to figure out that that's a bad look. Yeah. That's not painting God in good light. Oh, they say this a lot, especially when young people die, if it's a teenager. Mm-hmm. Oh, God must have needed another angel. So God murdered your 16-year-old?
Right.
Yeah. Think before you speak. Mm-hmm. So that's it. That's ridiculous. And not to mention the fact that humans don't turn into angels.
Yeah.
Ever. That's not a thing.
Yeah.
So it's just something that it's something that we just made up. It's like, oh, Grandma, there's a sparrow, or like whatever. It's just like we say such silly things, and then wonder why the outside world beyond the church thinks that people in the church are intellectually void. Well, because we say stupid crap like, oh, there was an owl outside my window last night, and I just know that was Grandpa.
Yeah.
Like, what? Like, so it's all these, like, if you just think about the sentence, God won't give me more than I can handle. And as a human and as someone that has studied the Bible for a long time in my life, I go, I'm fairly certain that God always gives us more than we can handle, so that way we can rely on Him, because that's really what He wants, is us to depend on Him, rely on Him. If He didn't give you more than you can handle, then you would never have to rely on Him. And so it's just nonsense. Like, it's just, there's no other way about it. It's just nonsense. But where it comes from is a Bible verse. I didn't say that good, did I? Bible. I'm bringing our Southern audience back in now.
Yes, bring them in. That works.
After my Dale Earnhardt joke, I lost them, and now they're back with Bible. There is a verse that says something similar, but it's not. It's out of context.
Yeah.
To say that God won't give us more than we can handle. The verse is 1 Corinthians 10:13, and it says that God will not allow you to be tempted, meaning the temptation in your life to sin will not ever be greater than your ability to escape it.
Right.
Now that makes sense, because what Jesus did on the cross was the new Exodus. It's a way to be free from our sins. So yes, there is no temptation whatsoever that we can't say no to. And I know, like, sometimes it doesn't feel like that. Sometimes it's like, I don't know, this kind of felt like everything was choosing it for me.
Right.
And it's like, no, that's just not true. Like, when you feel like, oh, I just can't get out of this, it's like, no, what 1 Corinthians 10:13 says is that God always makes a way out. The door is always unlocked. Just most of the time, we just don't open the door and walk out. We just let it happen.
No, it's true. 1 Corinthians 10:13 is my personal favorite Bible verse. It's like what we would consider a life verse. And so to hear that through the years, to hear the phrase, God won't give you more than you can handle, and people tagging it back to that, has left me in a place where I've had a mixture of frustrated and also, hey, I want to help you. Because in that, it takes incredible faith it would take a faith that doesn't exist to believe that God won't give you more than you can handle. Like, that's a faith that doesn't exist. But it still takes an incredible true faith to say that when my temptation is so real, that God is faithful to make sure there's a way for me to get out of this.
Yeah.
Like, to see that God's faithfulness actually provides a way for me to get out of a situation that is tempting me. So, like, when I was listening to this sermon this weekend, I was hearing, when we're going through these hard times often make hard decisions.
Yeah.
And hard decisions often, when we're under all that pressure, we can slip if we're trying to do it ourselves, which is what you shared, like stop relying on yourself. When you're trying to do it yourself and you're under that pressure, a lot of times you can make the wrong choice. You can fall into that temptation. But the beauty of this scripture is Paul, his actual experience is saying, when we're in this pressure situation, God actually provides a way for us to get out of it so that we don't sin, but we can still remain in the pressure. And I think that that's just a really powerful thing. And you went on to talk about Paul's his actual experience. And I'd like to see if we could really take a look into how our good effort phrases compare to people's actual situations. What does that look like? Because I feel like that's the picture you painted this past Sunday with Paul's journey of, hey, these good phrases are good, but they're not the same as people's actual situations.
Yeah, like, I don't think anyone says God won't give you more than you can handle because they have, like, ill intent. They're trying to be helpful. But the people's actual experiences, no, there is stuff that we cannot handle. There is stuff that, like, as an onlooker to different people's life situations, I wonder how in the world they're even out of bed.
Yeah.
Because I think, like, man, if that was me, I would be hard pressed to get out of bed. It would be hard to just continue to go on just looking at other people's situations, let alone if it happened to me. And like with Paul, like I love how later on, like so, the main passage this weekend was 2 Corinthians chapter 1. Paul's talking about his travels through Asia, and he says it was literally more than they could handle. Like it was too much, so they had to stop relying on themselves, start relying on God, and then God rescued them in that. But then Paul goes on later in 2 Corinthians 12, and he talks about like his own personal experience of like, hey, because something really amazing happened in his life. Like you have to go read the story about it, but like somehow he got to go and visit, whether via vision or however you want to look at that, the abode of God. And I like to say that because we have too many like weird thoughts when I say heaven.
Yeah, right.
So he got to go and visit heaven, the abode of God. And it was this like blessed experience, like that no one else got. So Paul knew that he was like very blessed and highly favored. And plus he's writing these letters, he's traveling around, he's like had an encounter with the risen Christ. Like by all accounts, like he had a lot of really amazing things that he could boast in, like, oh, look how much God must love me because this is happening and this is happening, this is happening. And so something had to tether him back to God, and it couldn't be the good stuff doesn't tether us to God. It actually fights against that. Like nobody is at their best spiritually when things are going good.
Yeah.
We're normally a lot stronger spiritually when things are going bad. And that's what had to happen to Paul. He said 3 different times, like he had this thorn in his flesh, and we don't know what it was. Some people think that it was blindness, because he mentions in one of his letters about having to write large so the way he could see it. That to me doesn't seem like because by that point Paul would have been like progressing in age and things. Maybe it was a physical ailment, though. I mean, it's possible. Based on some of the other writings of Paul, I'm more like would lean more towards he was probably struggling with some sort of temptation or sin. As a guy that probably I think most people thought that he used to be married, and then probably his wife probably passed. I think is what most people would say. I think it's a lot more likely that maybe he struggled with some sort of temptation. Or loneliness or grief or something in that. But either way, it's open-ended that way. If yours is a physical ailment or it's a mental ailment or it's a spiritual ailment, whatever it is, like there's these certain things in our life that help keep us tethered to God, that make us reliant. Like I remember when our house got broken into and all hell's breaking loose in my personal life, I read through all 150 Psalms in like no time. I'd never done that before in my life. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those seasons that like everything felt horrible all day long. But I also can never remember another time that every time that my heart ached because of what I was going through, that I would pick my phone up, pop open the Bible app, and I would just sit there and read the Psalms. The good, the bad, the ugly, the ups and the downs and all of that. And then this weird... And I would just read till I felt the peace of God just like completely overtake me.
Yeah.
And then I could just go back around about my life, and then everything would creep up again, and I would just grab my phone, open the Psalms, and read. And I think I read through all 150 Psalms in like 30 days or something.
Wow.
That way. And so it was like I wouldn't want anyone to have to go through like the emotional like issues and mental issues that I was going through in that season. But it is one of those things that I wish like people could have experienced that peace that I felt when I prayed or when I was reading the scriptures, that like I don't like when things are going good in my life, I don't just go, hey, let's go to the Psalms, you know. It's not that's not what we do. Like, or like things are going good, let's go out and into the sun and like lay out, or let's go to the whatever. Like, let's go have a good time. But when things are hard, our experience is like, okay, then that's going to help keep me tethered to God. And so it's this like really weird like give and take of like when
Yeah.
life is really, really tough, I feel super, super close to God. When life is really, really good, I have a tendency to just drift and be like, oh, things are good right now.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good recognition of just the reality of our actual experiences when we're going through difficult situations that seem like more than we can handle, versus times where we can feel like, hey, I can handle this,
Yeah.
and we tend to. At least I do. I probably shouldn't say we, but tend to almost give a little pat on the back, like, look at how far you've come, look at what you've done, like, look at what you've overcome, when really all the credit, like Paul said, all of the boasting is on God.
Yep.
The boasting isn't on us. The pride isn't on us. It's God and what he's been doing. So just to kind of give our listeners and viewers a heads up, what can we expect from the rest of this series, Bumper Sticker Theology?
Yes. So we got just 2 weeks left. Like I shared a bunch of them on Sunday. Like we could have made this series 2 months long, but there's a sense in which sometimes, especially maybe it's just this year in ministry, I feel like most of the sermons I've been preaching have been trying to correct things in a way. It's like, in that at some point I would like to. So that's why this series isn't going to be that long. Is like it does feel like I'm just going, oh, will you say this? Well, you're silly, and let me tell you why you're silly. And sometimes we need that, but like we don't need like 2 months of that.
Yeah.
Especially because we already had like 13 weeks of that in stained glass crash and things like that.
Right.
So it just feels like it's been a lot of this like correction this year. Where but the rest of this series, like this week, we're going to talk actually about a Bible verse that people use. They say it, but it doesn't mean what they think that it means. So it's still bumper sticker theology in my terminology of it.
Yeah.
Like we're going to be dealing with the phrase "I can do all things." I can do all things. And it's like, yeah, you should go read that. You should read the whole passage.
Yes.
And then see if perhaps you have made the grave mistake of taking Philippians 4:13 and plucking it out of the rest of chapter 4 where it belongs, and you put it on your eye black when you went and played in the NFL, or just as an example.
Yeah. Just as an example.
I'm not calling anybody out, Tim, but like just as an example, like maybe you and people like all praised. Whatever. That's going to be my intro for Sunday, I think.
Yeah.
But it was funny, like when Tim Tebow wore Philippians 4:13 on his eye black. Christians were just so astounded by that. Oh, that's so amazing. I was like, yeah, but like, never mind. I got to save it for Sunday. I got to save it for Sunday.
Please
so we're getting into that, and then the final week we're going to get into the silly phrase. God, see, it's even condescending to say it like that. The phrase. Because, people have tattoos of this.
Yeah.
People say this constantly, like, follow your heart.
Yeah.
And I've addressed this so much here, but, like, I preach on it probably yearly.
Yeah.
And then I still get on Facebook and see people that are associated with our church, like, I'm just going to follow, I'm just going to do what makes me happy on this one.
Yeah.
Like, do you come with earplugs in? Like, I just don't. So we're going to do it again in 2 weeks on that, just because that right there is actually a lot like this week. It is a direct contradiction to the Scriptures.
Right.
Like, there's nothing in the Christian worldview that says follow your heart. It is completely gone. It's not there anywhere to be found.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that for anyone who is going through life wondering, are these phrases, are these cliches, like, are they in the Scripture, are they not? We're here to help you in that, but really, as a Jesus follower, part of our responsibility is to know where our faith is found. And so when it comes to scriptures like 1 Corinthians 10:13, when it comes to scriptures like John 3:16, when you see these things that are popular and people say, go read the whole chapter, go read get the big picture. I think those things are important for us, and it's part of our responsibility so that we can serve God well, serve others well, and serve ourselves well as we learn who God really is and how he sees us and sees others as we follow him. If you are looking to take your next faith step, you can go to src.life. That is where you can find all things Southridge Church and look where you can take your next step here with us. We're so glad you tuned in to the Extra Point podcast. We'll be back next week for more. We'll see you then.
Thanks for tuning in to The Extra Point. Be sure to subscribe to the Southridge Church podcast and tune in every Wednesday for another episode of The Extra Point.